The dark truth behind the INFJ's people-pleasing habit. INFJs are often celebrated for their profound empathy, compassion, and unwavering desire to help others. They have a natural ability to connect with people on an emotional level, offering support and understanding in ways that most others simply can't. However, behind this seemingly selfless behavior lies a deeper, more complex truth, one that many INFJs struggle with but seldom acknowledge. The INFJ's tendency to people please is not merely an expression of kindness or a desire to be helpful, it is often rooted in deep-seated emotional wounds and unresolved internal struggles. This relentless habit of putting others' needs before their own can, over time, become emotionally and mentally draining. It's driven by an overwhelming fear of rejection, a need for validation, or a desperate attempt to avoid conflict or disappointment. But while the desire to make others happy may initially feel fulfilling, it can quickly turn into an exhausting cycle of self-sacrifice. INFJs often find themselves feeling burned out, resentful, and disconnected from their own needs and desires. In this video, we'll take a deep dive into the underlying reasons why INFJs fall into this pattern of people-pleasing. We'll uncover the emotional wounds that drive their compulsive need to constantly give, and explore how these habits can impact their mental health and relationships. Most importantly, we'll discuss how INFJs can begin to recognize these patterns, heal from past hurts, and break free from the cycle of people-pleasing, allowing them to live more authentically and prioritize their own well-being without guilt. Through this journey, INFJs can learn to embrace their natural empathy in a way that serves both themselves and others, creating more balanced, fulfilling connections along the way. 1. A childhood rooted in emotional neglect. Many INFJs grew up feeling emotionally invisible, often praised for being the mature one who kept the peace. This conditioning led them to believe that their worth comes from making others happy. Picture a young INFJ child, quietly observing the tension between their parents. When arguments erupted, the INFJ would step in as the calming force, diffusing conflict and soothing emotions. While other children were free to express anger or sadness, the INFJ learned to suppress their emotions to maintain family harmony. This pattern of emotional neglect stripped them of the right to be vulnerable, creating a lifelong struggle with self-worth. As adults, these INFJs continue to wear the mask of emotional stability, prioritizing others' needs while ignoring their own inner turmoil. They may struggle to form authentic connections, fearing rejection if they reveal their true emotional depth. 2. The desire to be seen as good. INFJs crave being seen as kind, selfless, and compassionate, often to the point of self-sacrifice. This desire for validation makes them people pleasers, afraid of being perceived as selfish. Imagine an INFJ employee who stays late at work, takes on extra projects, and listens to coworkers' emotional struggles, all while battling their own exhaustion. They fear that setting boundaries or saying no would make them appear cold or uncaring. This relentless pursuit of being good stems from a deep-seated fear of rejection and abandonment. This compulsion often leaves INFJs feeling drained and unappreciated, trapped in a cycle where they give endlessly but receive little in return. Over time, this emotional burnout can lead to resentment and self-loathing. 3. Over-identifying with others' pain. INFJs merge their identity with others' emotions, often losing sight of their own needs and desires. This leads to emotional enmeshment, where they feel personally responsible for others' happiness. Picture an INFJ friend who becomes deeply involved in helping a loved one through depression. They offer constant support, listen to endless venting, and try to fix the other person's emotional wounds. However, in doing so, they neglect their own mental health and begin to absorb the darkness of the person they're helping. Because INFJs are natural empaths, they struggle to distinguish between their own emotions and those of others. This makes it difficult for them to set emotional boundaries, often leaving them feeling depleted and lost. 4. The INFJ guilt complex. INFJs are haunted by guilt, feeling responsible for others' struggles and failures. This deep-seated guilt prevents them from saying no or setting healthy boundaries. Consider an INFJ who continues to support a toxic family member out of guilt, even though the relationship is emotionally abusive. They feel obligated to save the person, believing that walking away would make them a heartless individual. This guilt complex stems from the INFJ's intense empathy and desire to alleviate others' suffering. However, this emotional burden often leads to self-neglect and chronic anxiety. INFJs must learn that they are not responsible for fixing everyone's pain and that setting boundaries is an act of self-love, not selfishness. 5. The need for harmony and peace. INFJs have an innate need to create harmony in their environment, often sacrificing their own well-being to maintain peace. In a heated argument, the INFJ becomes the peacemaker, suppressing their own opinions to avoid conflict. They absorb the tension in the room and subtly steer conversations toward resolution, even if it means betraying their own values. This need for harmony often stems from past experiences where confrontation led to emotional chaos. INFJs fear that expressing their true feelings will shatter relationships, so they stay silent and bottle up their emotions. However, this suppression eventually leads to emotional resentment and internal conflict. INFJs must learn that true peace comes from authenticity, not self-erasure. By finding the courage to speak their truth, they can create deeper, more genuine connections without sacrificing their inner peace. 6. An unmatched depth of empathy. INFJs absorb the emotions of others like emotional sponges, often feeling others' pain as if it were their own. For instance, when a friend is struggling with heartbreak, the INFJ feels that emotional devastation just as deeply. This makes them feel responsible for easing others' suffering, leading them to prioritize others' needs at the expense of their own mental and emotional health. Imagine walking into a room filled with tension. While others remain unaffected, an INFJ immediately feels the weight of unspoken emotions and tries to mediate, even when they're already emotionally drained. They might stay up late comforting a friend, even when their own emotional reserves are depleted. Over time, this emotional absorption can lead to compassion fatigue and burnout, leaving the INFJ feeling isolated and misunderstood. 7. The fear of conflict and rejection. INFJs avoid conflict at all costs, fearing that standing up for themselves will lead to rejection or disappointment. This fear often stems from childhood experiences where they were misunderstood or invalidated for expressing their true emotions. An INFJ may stay in a toxic friendship because they fear hurting the other person, even when it's detrimental to their own mental well-being. They often suppress their true feelings to maintain harmony, bottling up resentment and pain. This pattern of self-sacrifice can lead to anxiety and depression, as the INFJ feels trapped between their desire for peace and their need for self-expression. 8. The constant battle between logic and emotion. INFJ's dominant introverted intuition, NI, clashes with their extroverted feeling, FE, function, creating a constant internal tug-of-war between what they know is right and what they feel is needed to maintain harmony. An INFJ might logically know they need to leave a draining job but stay because they feel guilty about disappointing their coworkers. This inner conflict often leads to paralysis, where the INFJ becomes stuck in a situation that no longer serves them. They may overanalyze every decision, fearing that following logic will make them appear cold, while following emotion will make them seem weak. The struggle between head and heart can be exhausting for INFJs, who often feel torn between their vision for the future and their deep-seated empathy for others. 9. The fear of abandonment. INFJs often struggle with abandonment wounds, fearing that if they stop meeting others' needs, they will be rejected or left behind. An INFJ stays in an emotionally draining relationship because they fear losing the connection. This fear stems from early experiences where their emotional needs were neglected or invalidated. As a result, they develop a pattern of overextending themselves to maintain relationships, even when those connections are toxic or one-sided. This deep-seated fear often leaves INFJs feeling trapped in unhealthy dynamics, unable to prioritize their own well-being. 10. The INFJ door slam as a defense mechanism. When INFJs reach their emotional limit, they resort to the infamous INFJ door slam, cutting off toxic people to protect their energy. However, This extreme measure is often a last resort after years of people-pleasing and emotional suppression. An INFJ may tolerate emotional abuse or manipulation for years, hoping the other person will change. But once they realize their emotional health is at stake, they sever ties completely and refuse to look back. This act of self-preservation is often misunderstood as cold-heartedness, but for the INFJ, it's the only way to protect their fragile inner world. 11. The struggle with self-worth. INFJs often tie their self-worth to how much they can help others, leading them to overextend themselves to gain approval and validation. An INFJ therapist works overtime to help clients while neglecting their own emotional well-being. They feel a deep sense of responsibility for others' healing and happiness, often sacrificing their own mental and physical health in the process. This constant cycle of self-neglect and emotional burnout leaves INFJs feeling empty and unappreciated, further diminishing their sense of self-worth. 12. The INFJ's desire to fix others. INFJs are natural healers, often drawn to helping broken people. However, this leads them to attract toxic, emotionally damaged individuals, hoping to fix them. An INFJ stays in a toxic relationship, believing they can heal their partner's trauma. They invest endless emotional energy into trying to fix others, often losing themselves in the process. This pattern of self-sacrifice stems from the INFJ's deep empathy and desire to create positive change, but it often results in emotional exhaustion and heartbreak. 13. The journey to self-love and boundaries. Breaking free from the INFJ people-pleasing cycle requires self-awareness, setting boundaries, and learning to prioritize their own emotional well-being. Start small by saying no to minor requests, practicing self-care, and surrounding yourself with people who respect your boundaries. INFJs must learn to prioritize their own needs without feeling guilty, recognizing that their worth is not defined by how much they can give to others. This journey to self-love is essential for INFJs to protect their mental health and thrive in their unique, intuitive world. INFJs are not inherently meant to sacrifice their own mental health for the sake of others. The natural inclination to care for others can sometimes evolve into people-pleasing behavior, rooted in deep emotional wounds and fears of rejection or inadequacy. By taking the time to understand the underlying causes of these patterns, whether it's the fear of disappointing others, seeking validation, or the need to feel needed, INFJs can start to break free from the cycle of self-sacrifice. This self-awareness is the first step in reclaiming their personal power and embracing the importance of self-care. Setting healthy boundaries isn't just a necessity, it's a form of self-respect and self-love. INFJs must recognize that their worth is not determined by how much they give to others or how well they meet everyone else's expectations. They deserve to live authentically, honoring their own needs, desires, and limitations without guilt or shame. It's okay to prioritize themselves and their well-being, to say no when needed, and to seek relationships that nurture them rather than drain them. Living in alignment with their true selves allows INFJs to offer the best of who they are to others, without losing their own identity in the process. Ultimately, the journey to self-empowerment for INFJs involves both compassion for others and for themselves. By healing their emotional wounds and learning to balance empathy with self-protection, they can create a life that's not only fulfilling but also sustainable, one that respects both their inner world and the connections they wish to cultivate with those around them. If you resonate with these struggles, remember, your empathy is a gift, not a burden. It's time to protect your energy and prioritize your own happiness. Drop a comment below and share your experience as an INFJ. Stay safe, and see you in the next one.